Good morning and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. It is October 14th, year of our Lord 2025. Had some technical difficulties with some of the systems here for my show, so it didn't record the last couple of weeks, but hopefully got them figured out. Looks like they're still kind of happening, but we'll see how it goes throughout the show. Was a little too late to do any baseball previews at all, so I will have to wait till the World Series. I will have a World Series preview because that is very important, but the ALCS and NLCS look like they're going one direction, so we won't do those right now. But let's just talk about college football. We had some massive news drop on Sunday. Major university and a major program fired their head coach after three straight losses. So going to react to that, and also going to react to what I saw in Autzen Stadium between Indiana and Oregon, and just a very impressive showing by Indiana there again already this season. Then I'm going to do my full reaction to Week 6 in the NFL, react to everything I saw from Sunday, Thursday, and last night in the doubleheader we had on Monday Night Football. And then finally, I will end my show as I always do with my Week 7 NFL Kody's covers and my Week 8 college football Kody's covers. Those are my top 5 picks in both college football and the NFL. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the show. But before I do, like I said, I'm back here recording. Technical difficulties are still starting to happen. We're going to power through here. Hopefully it doesn't look too bad on the other end. But if you like the video version of this podcast, please go ahead and like and subscribe right down here on YouTube. However, if you like the video or you like the audio version of this podcast, which is going to probably look a lot better, go ahead and subscribe on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music, or pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. And let's go ahead and move into our show now. So I wanted to talk about the big news that dropped on Sunday morning, and that was Penn State firing their head coach, James Franklin, after three straight losses. Of course, we know the loss 3 weeks ago to Oregon at home was another top 10, top 5 loss for James Franklin. He has just not been good in those games. I think he's like 2-24, 2-25 in those games at Penn State. So that kind of was a domino effect, because what happened that night led to what happened last week against UCLA in the Rose Bowl, where they lost to an 0-4 team on the road. Now, UCLA looks much improved. They got another victory this past weekend against Michigan State, but still not a good showing from James Franklin and Penn State in that outing there. And then they come back home, and you have Northwestern, probably one of the other worst teams in the Big Ten, although Northwestern does look to be improved. And you come home and you lose that game as well. So 0-3 in the Big Ten, lose 3 games in a row. And yeah, the Boo Birds were out. The people were out calling for his job. They're calling for his job at a Penn State hockey game. They started chanting "Fire James Franklin." So it was not good for James Franklin at all, and it wasn't going to get any better. I didn't think they would do this during the season, just because he's been there 12 years. He kind of righted the ship after what happened with Paterno, and then the short stay with Bill O'Brien. He kind of righted the ship a little bit and got this program back on track. And this is a program, and he's 34-8 in his last 4 seasons in college football. That's pretty darn good. Only a handful of teams have a better record than that. I think it's like Ohio State, Michigan, and Georgia, and that's like the entire list at this point, I believe, in the last 4 years. So he has a good record, and he's won games that he's supposed to win. He just hasn't won big games and games where he's kind of trying to have to play up to his opponent. And I think that was one of the bigger reasons, because these last 2 weeks, the Northwestern loss and the UCLA loss are kind of a microcosm and a reaction to what happened that Saturday night when they had the whiteout against Oregon, because that was the domino effect that started everything for this program, because they put all their chips into that basket. They had returning starters. You had Drew Aller returning. You had Singleton and Allen returning. Denied Dennis Sutton on the defensive side returning as well. You had a team that they thought could have a kind of impact like Ohio State had last year, like Michigan had 2 years ago. You get a lot of these veteran guys returning, and you can kind of make things happen and maybe make a run at the college football playoff national championship. That was not the case. That I didn't think it ended that Saturday night against Oregon, but it wasn't good. It was not good. And what happened there, I think the team, when you have a veteran team that comes back for one goal and one thing in mind, and their first opportunity to kind of have a big showing on a big stage, they fall again to a ranked opponent, even at their home too. I think that just kind of killed any momentum or any kind of any kind of inklings that this team had that they were a top end national title contender. And then that led to the last 2 weeks where a lot of their teams kind of look lifeless. The defense has been really bad, especially against UCLA, but was not great against Northwestern. And the offense just hasn't had much of a rhythm. It's been kind of frenetic a little bit. Andy Kotelnicki, their offensive coordinator, I think has gotten way too much credit for this team here. And actually, he hasn't really done a great job there. Their offense has never really been what's led this team. It's been led by the defense and I guess the run game, but he's not developed Drew Aller at all. Drew Aller is actually, if you want to, in my opinion, I think he's regressed over the last year and a half. So they haven't developed their quarterback that was supposed to be a top end talent, was a 5-star recruit as well. So they haven't developed him. The defense got worse, I believe, this year. I know they lost Abdul Carter, but they still had Denai Dennis Sutton and plenty of guys on that defensive line and in the back end that have a really good experience and are really good players. So that wasn't good either. So this team just it wasn't making any progress, and it looked like they were kind of just stuck in mud. And what we saw from this team for years was like, okay, they're kind of the definition of above average or maybe even average, where it's like, okay, they're never bad enough to like, okay, let's scrap everything and move on. But they're never good enough. We're like, okay, they're a legit national title contender. Because even last year, they won 2 playoff games, but it was against Boise State and SMU. So no one exactly took them seriously as a national title contender. And sure enough, they get into a big game against Notre Dame. They played really well and were in that game the entire time, of course. But Drew Aller has a late interception. They lose the game, and it just seems to be status quo for Penn State. But they came into this year. They were the number 2 ranked team going into the season. They had all these returning starters. They had all this momentum, and it all died in week 5 against Oregon at home. And what they let that game do is they didn't just lose a game that night. That game led to them being 0-3 in the last 3 games and 0-3 in the Big Ten. And that game is what ultimately led to James Franklin being relieved of his duties and being fired by Penn State. And that was a little bit of a shock there because I do think James Franklin's a good coach. You saw what he did at Vanderbilt before going to Penn State and everything he's led at Penn State. I think he's a solid coach. So kind of let's transition there just from the reaction to Penn State firing James Franklin to just who could be possible replacements. And to be honest with you, the candidates I'm hearing right now, Matt Campbell I do like because I think if you give him 4 and 5-star recruits, because he's done it with 3-star recruits at Iowa State and been fairly successful. If you get him out of a program like Penn State that recruits at a higher level, I think he could be an upgrade at the head coach position. But Matt Rule, no offense to Matt Rule, I think that's a downgrade. I think that's a pretty significant downgrade in my opinion. We'll see what he does for the rest of the season at Nebraska. They are 5-1, but they do have a lot of tough games left on their schedule. So we'll see where they end up before we kind of crown him as like that year 3 Matt Rule kind of rule thing. I think that's a downgrade. Manny Diaz is for sure a downgrade, who was the defensive coordinator and now the head coach at Duke. With Penn State, it's a little bit of be careful what you wish for because I don't know if there's a better coach out there that's going to be ready to go. If you can get Lane Kiffin, I think that would be an upgrade. Right now, the first 2 calls I would make, of course, to Kurt Cignetti, but he's not leaving Indiana because what he's doing in Indiana, he can do in Penn State, and he's doing it in Indiana. So he's already done what James Franklin did in 12 years at Penn State. He has 2 top 10 victories. James Franklin has 2 of those in his 12 years at Penn State. Kirk Cignetti already has that done. And James Franklin could have never dreamed of going into Autzen Stadium and beating Oregon. Kurt Cignetti just did that last week. So Kurt Cignetti is staying at Indiana. Let's end that conversation. I think the 2 best candidates for this job are, in my opinion, Matt Campbell at Iowa State and Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Now, Lane Kiffin is kind of turned into kind of a Southern boy, so I don't know if he would leave the Southeast, the SEC to go to the Big Ten. But make no mistake about it, Lane Kiffin's done a lot of good things at Ole Miss. Penn State is an upgrade of a job over Ole Miss. Penn State is an upgrade of a job over Ole Miss. You get out of the SEC, you kind of get out of where, okay, even if at your best, you're still, 4th or 5th best team in that conference. You get out of that there. I think he could do really good things at Penn State, but he seems like he's kind of liking that Southern life and that SEC lifestyle, so maybe not. So if I were the Penn State Nittany Lions in that program, I think Matt Campbell is your best candidate. And now if he wants to leave Iowa State, that's a different question. He's kind of been hesitant when other big jobs have come up, but still, I think Matt Campbell is your best candidate there. And then let's go ahead and move on and talk about the team that we just kind of touched on a little bit, and that's Kirk Cignetti's Indiana Hoosiers. They go into Oregon and beat the Oregon Ducks 30-20, and honestly, that game wasn't even that close. They threw a pick six that made that game closer, but they pushed Oregon around, held them to under 100 yards of total offense in the second half. They were the more physical team. They were the more hungry team. They were the better team on Saturday from start to finish, and that was super impressive to me. And I asked the question going in. I asked the question right now: is Indiana a legit national title contender? And I say, without hesitation and unequivocally, yes, they are. Yes, they are. They're better than their version was last year. Last year, they were more of kind of a fun story, easy schedule, and kind of got into the playoff, but no one really took them seriously. This year is not the case. They upgraded on the lines of scrimmage. They have legit dudes on both the offensive line and defensive line. They have better talent. They did well in the transfer portal. They did well in high school recruiting. They have better talent on their team. And the biggest thing is Fernando Mendoza, in my opinion, is a decent upgrade over Curtis Rourke, who they had last year. So you upgrade the lines of scrimmage, you have more talent on that roster, and you upgrade the quarterback position, and that I believe would leads to the team being a top three team in the country right now. I believe there is three top end national title contenders left in college football right now, and that is Ohio State, that is Miami, and that is now Indiana, who has entered that conversation that was previously held by Oregon at that three spot. Now that is firmly Indiana, and the rest of their schedule looks fairly easy. It looks like them and Ohio State are on a collision course to meet in the Big Ten championship game, and that would be a huge opportunity and huge stage for Indiana if they can go in there and win that and beat Ohio State, who looks virtually unbeatable right now. So huge weekend for Kurt Cignetti, huge weekend for Indiana, great win, and this team is legit national title contender going forward. So that was just a quick reaction to James Franklin being fired and just Indiana and their impressive victory on the road in Autzen Stadium against Oregon. Let's go ahead and move to the NFL and just a quick reaction to what happened in Week 6 in the NFL. First thing I want to react to is actually what I saw Sunday morning in London with the New York Jets. The New York Jets fall to 0-5. Actually, I think they fell to 0-6. Fell to 0-6 on the season, and they had 82 yards of total offense in this game. It was absolutely putrid on offense, just awful all around. And I was not a huge fan of what they did in the offseason. What they did in the offseason was they signed Justin Fields to a 2-year, $40 million contract, $30 million guaranteed. And then they had no contingency plan or no backup plan. You didn't draft a quarterback. I guess you kept Tyrod Taylor, but Tyrod Taylor at this point in his career is for sure a backup. He's not a starter in this league, although I think he could do better than what Justin Fields is doing right now. But either way, you signed Justin Fields to this contract based on what? Based on what have you seen in his career? He was decent to start the season last year for Pittsburgh, but then they benched him. And then at Chicago, he showed kind of signs of life every now and then, but he was never that consistent of a quarterback. He never could play within the pocket. He never saw the field greats. He holds onto the ball really long. All the things that you can't do as a quarterback in this day and age in 2025, Justin Fields does them a lot. So did not understand that. And then it looks like this team just kind of quit on this coach and this staff. I mean, 0-6, you only score 11 points, and most of that was by your defense, I believe, against the Denver Broncos, who was a really good defense. 82 yards of total offense. Are you kidding me? I've seen some inept offenses in both college football and the NFL over the years I've watched the sport, but nothing like that. 82 yards of total offense. There's teams that have more than that on a drive, on one singular drive in a game, and you have 82 yards of total offense, just absolutely putrid. Aaron Glenn, I thought he was a decent hire, but maybe he's just a little in over his head, wasn't quite ready for this opportunity. And I mean, who really succeeds with the Jets? Rex Ryan had a couple good years where they made the AFC Championship game, a couple back-to-back years, but then I think he ended up with the 500 record as the Jets head coach after all, so had a lot of bad seasons as well. So I asked the question, is the Jets the worst franchise in the NFL? And I think they are, because I think the Browns are actually a better franchise. They actually draft better than the Jets recently as well. So I think the Jets are the worst franchise in the NFL. They're a place where quarterbacks go to die. We've seen it over and over. Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers is looking great for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looked awful for a lot of the season last year. And now you have Justin Fields who's looking awful. So It's a place where talented quarterbacks seem to go to die. So I believe the Jets are the worst franchise in the NFL right now. Let's go ahead and transition to what we saw actually Thursday night in the Giants Philadelphia Eagles game, where the Giants absolutely hammered the Philadelphia Eagles. And big question mark for me is what's going on with the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a major identity crisis. And you start off 4-0 and you win how you've always won, kind of in Philadelphia, with defense, opportunistic plays, and the run game. You're 4-0. But your wide receivers, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, aren't getting the ball, and they're kind of upset and they're kind of annoyed that you're not getting them the ball. So these last two games, you've kind of tried to force feed Devontae Smith and AJ Brown the ball, still hasn't been great, and now you're neglecting your run game and the best player on your offense in Saquon Barkley, and he's had I think less than 15 carries in the last two games. So you go 0-2, you lose at home to Denver where you had a decent lead, and then you lose on the road on a short week and Thursday night to a Giants team that only had one win previously to that game. And I think there's just an offensive crisis going on in Philadelphia. You don't know if you want to be the traditional team that you've been where you run the ball, smash mouth, you run it with Saquon Barkley, you run it with Jalen Hurts, but yes, your star wide receivers aren't going to see the ball. So they might be upset, but they're also going to be 4-0, and they're also going to be defending Super Bowl champions with that recipe as well. Largely last year, that was their recipe. So that's a huge question mark for me is what is going to be the identity of this offense going forward, because outside of, and I'll give Jalen Hurts credit for this, the best two games he's played as a quarterback in the NFL are the two Super Bowls he's played in. And that's what you really want from your quarterback. So credit and hats off to that. But on a consistent week to week basis, Jalen Hurts is not a good enough quarterback from the pocket, seeing the field on a consistent basis to be a guy that's going to threaten you with his arm on a week to week basis. He's just not, and he never really has been. Going all the way back to his Alabama and Oklahoma days, he's never really been that kind of quarterback. So that's always been a huge question mark for me. So I don't think you're ever going to be a team where he drops back 30, 40 times and throws the ball all over the yard to your two stud wide receivers. It's just not going to be the case. You're not going to consistently win that way. So do you get back to just being that running team and now your wide receivers don't get the shine that they want to get? It's definitely a huge offensive crisis here for this Philadelphia Eagles team, and it's a huge question mark going forward and how they can actually figure this out, because this is what kind of did them in 2 years ago when they had that slide and they just finished the season awful because they kind of had that identity crisis towards the end of 2 years ago. Do they have that again this year? I think it seems like they do. So they need to figure it out and figure it out fast, because they could see themselves as maybe a wild card team. Now the Commanders lost last night, so that's a huge win for them in the win column. They stay at the top of the NFC East, but they're going to be right on their heels all year as well. Last and final thing I want to talk about from the NFL this past weekend is actually we're going to stay in the state of Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are, I believe they're 4-1 or 5-1, but they have a stranglehold on that division in the AFC North, and they're playing really good football. Their defense has finally gotten back into form. TJ Watt is looking like the TJ Watt that we've always known. Their defense is playing good on the back end with Jalen Ramsey and guys like that. So this is a team, let me see what their standings are at. So they are 4-1. Cincinnati in their division is 2-4, and then Baltimore and Cleveland are both 1-5. So this is a team in Pittsburgh that can put a stranglehold on this division and maybe even have this division clinched by maybe Thanksgiving at this point, the way that they're rolling. And next week they go to the Bengals. The Bengals have been struggling. Now they get the Packers at home after that and the Colts at home and then the Chargers. So Packers, Colts at home, and then on the road at the Chargers. That 3-game stretch is going to tell me all I need to know about this Steelers team, about Aaron Rodgers, because if they can get out of that 3-game stretch maybe at a 2-1, that's going to be huge for this team to win this division. But the thing I want to ask about the Pittsburgh Steelers, are they a legit AFC title contender? I'm not saying Super Bowl yet. Are they a legit contender to get the AFC title? And if you get to the AFC title, you obviously have a chance to win that game and get to the Super Bowl. But are they a legit contender in the AFC? And I'm going to go ahead and pause right now with that. But I do think they have an opportunity to be that kind of team. Their defense is playing well. Aaron Rodgers is playing well. They are getting better contributions in the run game from both Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. And their receivers are kind of starting to emerge. DK Metcalf's had a good game. And they've leaned on their tight ends, whether it's Darnell Washington, Jonnu Smith, Pat Freiermuth. They've leaned on their tight ends a bunch, and that's always been a big thing for Aaron Rodgers as a tight end. So I think this team has the opportunity to be an AFC contender, but I want to see how they get through that 3-week stretch. Packers at home, Colts at home, Chargers on the road. If they can get through that stretch 2-1, and gosh, if they get through that stretch 3-0, then they really would be an AFC contender, an AFC title contender, and maybe even legit Super Bowl contender as well. So that's been my reaction to Week 6 in the NFL. Not a lot of big games. The morning slate was not great, to be honest with you. It was not a great morning slate. Wasn't a lot to react to, so that's why I kind of chose those 3 topics. Last night we actually had some good games. The Bears actually got some breaks. They didn't get any officiating breaks because the officials seem to hate the Chicago Bears, and some really bad calls down the stretch in that game. Just an egregious illegal procedure call that took away a touchdown from Caleb Williams to Roma Dunze. So that was interesting there. But either way, the Bears got some breaks, they got some turnovers, and they actually made a game-winning field goal by Jake Moody, who was left for dead from the San Francisco 49ers. So maybe there's a little bit of a change in luck there for the Bears. Not going to say that yet because they are one of the most snake-bitten kind of cursed franchises in all the NFL. But let's go ahead and finish my show like I always do with my Kody's Covers. That is my college football Week 8 top picks and NFL Week 7 top picks. We'll start in college football. We're going to start in the SEC, and we have number 10 LSU and number 17 Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt is currently a 1.5 point favorite in this game. Now, LSU still hasn't found a great offensive rhythm. They were just okay this last week against South Carolina, but what they bring anywhere they go is that defense led by their defensive coordinator Blake. Blake Baker is their defensive coordinator. They play really good defense. They get after you. They get after the quarterback. They kind of get the quarterback to make mistakes, like we saw with DJ Lagway in that game with 5 interceptions. So that travels anywhere you go if you're LSU. And Vanderbilt's still not a great, tough environment. Vanderbilt, I still think the jury's kind of out. They looked okay against Alabama, but really made a lot of mistakes that led to Alabama pulling away in that game. Their 2 major victories early on in the season, South Carolina and Virginia Tech, do not look good at all because both those teams do not look good. And actually, Virginia Tech, of course, fired their coach. So I think LSU is still the better team. I think they're finding a little bit of offensive rhythm as well. So give me LSU to win, and that means they would cover. LSU plus 1.5 is the play there. We're going to stay in the SEC for the first 3 games. Actually, in the second game I want to pick in the SEC is number 5 Ole Miss and number 9 Georgia. And Georgia is currently a 7.5 point favorite in this game. Now, Georgia got all the breaks, every single break they could have against Auburn. They got officiating breaks. They got just Auburn just kind of quitting after that huge call. Where did Jackson Arnold get in? Was it a fumble? Was it a touchdown the other way? Whatever it was, that took like 20 minutes to review. So Georgia got their typical breaks that they do get in SEC play, it seems like. And they won against Auburn, but it was definitely not an impressive showing. And outside of the Tennessee game this year for Georgia, I haven't been impressed by anything I've seen. Maybe the second half against Alabama, but they couldn't close that game out or get the lead in that game. Ole Miss sputtered all Saturday morning against Washington State and almost sputtered too much where they took a loss against Washington State. I think that was a classic look-ahead spot for Ole Miss. They did not take Washington State seriously, and that is something, and if I'm going to knock Lane Kiffin, that is something that he does. He's a guy that does not get his team up for every game. That is one of his issues, and he needs to fix, especially if he wants a bigger job like Penn State or Florida. 7.5 is a lot of points. I think this Ole Miss team can hang on both sides of the ball with Georgia. Georgia has virtually no pass rush, so Trinidad Chambliss should have all day to throw and be able to pick apart that Georgia defense, which is better on the back end. But how long can they guard with 0 pass rush? So I think Ole Miss has an outside shot to upset Georgia in this game. I think they absolutely cover. So give me Ole Miss plus 7.5 in this game. Then we have the third Saturday in October game. This is number 11 Tennessee at number 6 Alabama, and Alabama is currently an 8.5 point favorite in this game. Another big spread for a good SEC game. Alabama, I think, is the best team in the SEC. Ty Simpson, I think, is by far the best quarterback in the SEC and one of the better quarterbacks in the entire country in college football. So that's an interesting thing there. And then Tennessee kind of sputtered around against Arkansas last weekend at home. Joey Aguilar has been good, but was not great in that game. I still like this offense with Joey Aguilar. This defense is still pretty good as well. That's a big spread. 8.5 is a lot. I think you can still move the ball on Alabama's defense. Alabama's run game is still kind of coming along. It's still not there where they'd like it to be. So I think Tennessee keeps it close. Watch out for a backdoor cover as well. So give me Tennessee plus 8.5 in this game. Then we'll move to the Big 12 and we have what they call the Holy War, and that is between number 23 Utah at number 15 BYU. And Utah is actually a 3.5 point favorite in this game on the road. I know it's not a long road trip. It's Salt Lake City to Provo. It's about 30-minute drive, whatever. But a 3.5 point favorite on the road. Utah still has that one loss in conference against Texas Tech, so they don't really have any margin of error in the conference if they want to get to the Big 12 championship game. BYU pulled out that comeback victory against Arizona last weekend. They're undefeated in conference. They're undefeated overall. Bear Bachmeier, their freshman quarterback, probably had his worst game of his career so far last week against Arizona, but still was gritty enough to win that game. And then Utah, after it was seen that Sam Leavitt was ruled out against them for Arizona State, they ended up rolling Arizona State at home. Still some question marks on the offensive side. How good is Devin Dampier when he plays better opponents? That's a big question mark for me. I just like BYU at home. I think they could win this game. I think they definitely cover. So give me BYU plus 3.5 in this game. And then another huge rivalry, another huge rank rivalry this weekend as well. And it is number 20 USC at number 13 Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is actually a 9.5 point favorite. I think that went up yesterday when both Wayman Jordan and Eli Sanders were ruled out. I knew that was going to happen since Saturday night, so I don't know why that line moved that much. Vegas, I thought, would know that. But Notre Dame's 2 losses already, of course, on the season. They have 0 margin for error. They have to win out to have a chance to get into the college football playoff. USC is 5-1. If they could split between Notre Dame and Oregon at the end of the year and win out the rest of their games, they could be a playoff team coming off a huge victory where they actually absolutely dominated Michigan at home on the ground, out physical Michigan. Can they replicate that performance? Because that's what's going to be needed against this Notre Dame team on the road. This Notre Dame defense has been better of late, but you could also question the competition. But their 2 biggest games against Miami and Texas A&M, the defense got pushed around. So can USC push around this defense like A&M did, like Miami did, and score on them? And then on the other side of the ball, Notre Dame's really balanced team. C.J. Carr, their freshman quarterback's been playing really good from the quarterback position, and they have a 2-headed monster in Price and Love in the running game. That'll be an interesting dynamic there as well, and an interesting feat for USC if they can slow them down. I think USC can slow them down enough. I think there's a chance they can win outright. Of course, I'm a fan, so I'm going to say that I'm a little bit biased there, but still, I think they definitely cover. So give me a USC plus 9.5. I'm on all the dogs in college football. Let's see if that actually helps this weekend. Let's go over to the NFL, and we're going to start with the game between the Rams and the Jaguars, and this is a game overseas. I believe this is, I don't know if this is the Dublin game or if this is in London again, but there's no home team here. This is a road game for both. This is both overseas in Europe. Rams are a 2.5 point favorite in this game. I think the Jaguars got exposed a little bit for kind of frauds this past weekend at home against the Seahawks. Rams did not look great against the Baltimore Ravens, but I just like this team better. We'll see what the news is about Puka Nacua. That would be huge. But I think the Rams win. I think the Rams cover. Give me the Rams minus 2.5 in this game. Then we have the Eagles at the Vikings, and the Eagles are currently a 1.5 point favorite in this game. Like we talked about earlier in the reaction portion of this show to the NFL Week 6, the Eagles have a crisis on their hands right now. They have an offensive crisis. It's not good right now for this Eagles team, so I do not like what's going on there. The Vikings are coming off a bye. I think they still should roll with Carson Wentz. I just don't know if J.J. McCarthy's fully ready yet, and I just don't think J.J. McCarthy's that good, to be honest. But I think the Vikings win, so they would cover at home. So give me the Vikings plus 1.5. I think the Brian Flores can kind of rattle Jalen Hurts in this game. Then we have one of the better games of the weekend, and that is the Colts at the Chargers. And the Chargers are currently a 1.5 point favorite in this game. Chargers are injured everywhere. Quentin Johnston's missing time. Of course, their 2 tackles are going to be out. There's injuries in the backfield. Omarion Hampton got hurt this past weekend. Just a lot to overcome against a good Colts team who is healthy. This Colts team's healthy. Jonathan Taylor, in my opinion, should be the Offensive Player of the Year right now. They sputtered around against the Cardinals, but they still got the victory. Chargers also sputtered around against the Dolphins, but still got the victory as well. I think this Colts team is just the better team right now and the more healthy team right now. So I'm going to take them to cover. So give me the Colts plus 1.5, and I actually like the money line to win the game outright as well. Then we have a big game in the NFC East, and that is the Commanders at the Cowboys, and the Commanders are a 2.5 point favorite in this game. I just don't like the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense has been one of the worst defenses in the league this year. Don't trust them at all. Jaden Daniels and this Commanders team is going to get after this defense. They're going to move the ball with Bill Krosky-Merritt running the ball, with Deebo Samuel in the pass game. Still don't expect Terry McLaurin to play, but I think this offense will move the ball on the Cowboys, and I believe that's what leads to their victory. So give me the Commanders to win. Give me the Commanders to cover. Commanders minus 2.5 is the play there. Then finally, we end with the Monday night game, and that is the Buccaneers at the Lions, and the Lions are a 4.5-point favorite in this game. Now, the Lions are coming off a tough loss where they did not play great against the Chiefs on Sunday night, but they also got hosed with the refs as well. But we get into that another time. That's just classic Chiefs at home. The NFL couldn't see them go to 2-4, so the Chiefs did get every call, and they didn't get any calls on them. Like I said, we won't get into that too deep, but still. And the Buccaneers are coming off another gritty victory at home, another gritty performance by Baker Mayfield. Can they take that on the road to Detroit? Detroit's a 4.5-point favorite in this game. I think the margins are too thin for this team for 4.5 to be the spread. If 2.5 was there, I'd probably take the Lions. But with that big of a spread, 4.5, that's big in the NFL. I think the Buccaneers will cover. I think the Lions will win a close game. But giving the Buccaneers to cover, Bucks plus 4.5 is the play there. So that has been my show today. Let me just remind you, as always, if you like the video version, even how fuzzy it is, please go ahead and like and subscribe right here on YouTube. However, if you prefer the audio version, please go like and subscribe on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.